Once again, thanks for coming out, guys. Here's Jenna.
Hey guys, for those of you who were at the Columbus rally last month, hey, welcome back. It's great to see you again, and thank you for listening to my speech for the second time. For those of you who weren't, thank you for coming. I'll begin my story with a little bit about myself. My name is Jenna VanHouten. I am now 20 years old. I'm a full-time psychology student at Wright State University. I could be your daughter, I could be your granddaughter, your niece, your cousin, or your best friend. I could even be you. When I was 9, I was put into therapy and eventually diagnosed with major depressive disorder. When I was 16, my doctors concluded I was suffering from bipolar disorder as well. Throughout my life, regardless of the medications they put me on, my symptoms have always been persistent. I have days where I can't get out of bed, days where I cry for hours for no apparent reason, and days I feel like the biggest waste of space on the entire planet. This sounds exaggerated, dramatic, and really ridiculous to most people, but that's what it's like when you suffer from the disorders I've been diagnosed with. It has made it difficult for me throughout my life to function as a normal person on a daily basis. Colton Tant, who is my 23-year-old boyfriend, was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the age of 15. For those of you who don't know much about Crohn's disease, it's an intestinal dysfunction. His doctor once explained it to me as an analogy. He said, imagine trying to run on a broken leg is like trying to digest food with Crohn's disease. It's accompanied by severe abdominal pain and can even affect his extremities and eye functions. He takes Remicade, which is very similar to chemotherapy. It's immunosuppressant medicine that is made from a mutated mouse gene that is then injected into his body every 6 weeks in the form of an IV treatment. The treatment itself takes about 2 hours, and it literally drains the life out of him. For the week before and the week after treatment, his symptoms are usually at their worst. Not only is this treatment a painful and exhausting one, but it costs $7,000 per treatment. In addition to Remicade, Colton has been prescribed various prescription pills and steroids to try to control his disease. On behalf of both of this, none of these medications and pharmaceuticals have helped in the slightest compared to what a little bit of good organic cannabis can do. I have been prescribed more than 8 brain chemical altering drugs in my lifetime that I can think of off the top of my head. I started using cannabis at the age of 15, and it was then that I realized if I could just have this instead of all of these laboratory-made drugs with harmful and unknown side effects, I could pretty much cure my mental ailments. Cannabis makes me able to function and take care of my responsibilities, have no ailments at all. And Colton feels the same. Cannabis has become our belief, our cure, our passion, our medicine, and our hope. On March 4th, 2010, our lives were turned upside down. At about 10 p.m. at our home on Selkirk Road here in Dayton, there was a knock on the door. When Colton answered it and saw police, he attempted to step outside and close the door behind him, as we all know you should do. Little did we know that it was all too little, too late. As an officer physically pulled Colton off of our front porch, several more officers rushed their way into our home without permission and without a search warrant. Guns were drawn and pointed in my face as they screamed at me to put my hands in the air. I did accordingly because I was scared for my life as they began raiding and ransacking our home. Colton and I both asked several times where the search warrant was, and they would simply respond that they didn't need one. Their sergeant was already on the way with one. Come to find out, in a recent court hearing, there was never a search warrant presented for our case. The police found 4 medical-grade cannabis plants in Colton's office closet. 3 were mature, and 1 was a small, recently potted plant. 3 of us were arrested: Colton, myself, and Trevor, who is Colton's brother, who was living in our basement at the time. We were all arrested for felony cultivation, criminal tools, and trafficking. Despite the fact that Trevor was the only one who trafficked and admitted to it, Colton and I were the only ones indicted. However, to a felony 5 cultivation and felony 5 criminal tools. We were released from jail on a thing called detective release, which basically means our attorneys got us out for further investigation. I made the silly assumption that the worst was over. What could possibly be worse than going to jail and being arrested for felonies? Police brutality, that's what's worse. Since March 4th, the police have been back to our home on a number of occasions, somewhere around 15 times. They've only documented 3 of these times. When they come, a range of things happen. They can do everything from banging on the door for 45 minutes to parking out front and setting their spotlights on our home. As Tanya said before, we were not the nuisance, the police were. They said inappropriate and threatening things a number of times. For example, when I was arrested, the officer told me that I was too cute to be with such a scruffy loser. He also asked how old I was and how old I thought he was. When I responded with, "I don't think it's appropriate to interrogate me and arrest me and compliment me at the same time," I was directly arrested and taken to Montgomery County Jail. We have also been told that they will come back every day until they get the drugs out of our house, and the sergeant once said, "I will stay at your door until your stress levels are at their highest," justifying their behavior, stating it is their job to harass criminals. To me, this is not appropriate police conduct. This is harassment at its fullest that sex offenders and violent criminals don't even receive. The police also make false excuses for why they're there in the first place, such as people have been fighting in the front yard, when on that particular day at that time, Colton and I were laying in bed watching a movie. They will come on days that no one has been there but Colton and I and say that it's obvious we've been drug trafficking all day, when the trafficking charge doesn't even apply to us. During the most recent police encounter, Colton was at our home alone and the police literally forced their way in, kicking and breaking down our side door that was paid out of our own pockets. The whole reason they did this is because they knew Colton was there alone and they didn't bother to check the records that he was still allowed on the property. The results of this entire situation are devastating. Because we committed a felony inside of our home that is in the same category as prostitution and gambling, we were court-ordered off of the property for 365 days. In other words, the drug war took our home from us. If we are caught on the property, it is not only a trespassing charge, but also a breaking and entering charge. We are now considered public nuisances. Since we've lost our home, Colton and I both have no other choice but to return to our parents' homes. We are so fortunate to have the parents we have who forgave us and provided us with a roof over our heads, but it's still an emotional transition to go from living for 2 years with someone who's practically your spouse to going back to your parents, and we know it's been a tough transition for them as well. Another devastating result is how this has affected our disorders, and I'm going to try to say this without crying this time. We have gone 7 months so far with not having a clue in the world what lies in our future. Stress directly affects Crohn's disease, making Colton's pain even worse. For me, I have feelings of hopelessness, and it has piqued my depression and anxiety. It has set me in a permanent low with my bipolar disorder. I worry constantly what's going to happen. That if we lose this case, I could get a charge that prevents me from ever making a career out of my life. I'm sorry. Sometimes I even wonder if I want to be here on Earth to experience it. But when my feelings get that low, I remember why I'm here speaking in the first place. For everyone and anyone else that has ever been victimized by this insane prohibition. For my fellow patients and loved ones of patients, which we all are, and to do my best to make a difference here in Ohio and pass House Bill 478 so that this doesn't happen to anyone or anyone's family ever again. So that us patients can stop suffering, stop worrying, stop losing our homes and our jobs and our futures over a natural medicine, and we can finally start healing. And also for the people who have came out of the woodworks for Colton and I, showing a nationwide support, particularly Mrs. Tanya Davis. Prior to this event, Tanya had no idea who we were. She saw us on TV when the local news exploited us for a week talking about the major local marijuana bust. Although the crazy media did the best they could to make us look like unintelligent, irrational, crazy potheads, Tanya saw right through it. She saw our pain and our flaws and what we did wrong. My parents had already hired the law offices of Ryan to represent me. Tanya got a hold of the Ryans, not only got them to represent Colton as well, but to cut the price in half for both of us. Our parents paid what they could afford, which is awesome. And Tanya, out of the goodness of her heart, co-signed for a large amount of money. For the past 8 months, we have been social networking, spreading the word, and going to events to try to raise this money, not only for Colton and mine's proper legal representation, but so that Tanya can continue her commitment to help save those in the drug war. Because we all know Colton and I are far from being the only ones. Although we accept donations, and Colton has original artwork and a few t-shirts for sale, speaking here today and sharing my story, beliefs, and support with everybody means more than money ever could. Each of you as an individual listening to my drug war experience means more to me than money ever could. Now that Ohio is a declared Republican state, we must unite together and make our voices even louder. As President John F. Kennedy said himself, let us not seek the Democratic answer. Let us not seek the Republican answer. Let us seek the right answer. So please, friends, get involved. We must change these ridiculous laws. How is it okay for Colton and I to lose our home before proven guilty in a court of law? Why are patients forced to suffer more than we already do? Support the Ohio Medical Compassion Act, and thank you for listening to me.